Let's call the meeting to order for December 2nd, 2024 for the Deschutes County Board of Commissioners. Are we ready, Brenda? Yes. Okay, citizen input. Is there anyone in the room that cares to have a comment? Okay. How about anyone online with a raised hand? No raised hands. Okay, all right. Thank you so much. So then let's go to agenda item number 1. You got?
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Kevin Moriarty, County Forester. I'm here today to move approval to accept grant funding from the Oregon Department of the State Fire Marshal for community wildfire risk reduction efforts and authorize the county administrator to sign document number 2024-902 accepting the grant. Just a little background. This past July, the Deschutes County Natural Resources Department, in coordination with Emergency Management, applied for a community wildfire risk reduction grant through the Oregon Department of the State Fire Marshal. The original proposal was not accepted because the project was close to homeless encampments and was not eligible as part of the grant criteria. Oregon State Fire Marshal subsequently allowed the county to pivot the project to areas that were not close to homeless encampments while still providing community protection. Given this option, the new application was submitted to implement a shaded fuel break on City of Bend property, and this application was successfully received and successfully received grant funding. The project itself is essentially a 3.5 mile shaded, 200-foot wide shaded fuel break along the eastern part of Juniper Ridge. And it's approximately 50 acres, and where we would reduce ladder fuels by removing small trees and brush on City of Bend property. And hopefully you have a map attached as well for where that would be located. This project will help surrounding communities like JD Estates and other communities on the east side of Juniper Ridge. The amount awarded was $75,000, of which $67,500 would be used for contracted services, and the remaining $7,500 would be used for administrative costs. Essentially how it would work is we'd set up an agreement with the city, and the county would administer the contract and implement the project. And I guess if you have any questions at the time, I'm free to answer anything.
I'd just be curious on the first rejection are there specific prohibitions on your homeless encampments, or was it more like we were stating that that was a reason we wanted to do this project and they didn't accept that as an eligible purpose?
Yeah, so in the application, it wasn't exactly clear that work could not be done in or around homeless encampments, and that's why it was rejected. It really has more to do with the displacement of homeless encampments, as why they don't want to see work done around there, even though we could probably assure them that that wouldn't occur. It just was kind of a hard no as far as work being done around homeless encampments.
They were worried that in the process of implementing the fuel break, we would be displacing people.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the fact that where this fuel break is going in is still probably pretty useful if there were to be unplanned ignitions in unauthorized homeless camping areas.
Yeah.
Is okay.
Yeah, we felt that the top priorities to work in the areas around the homeless encampments itself, but since that wasn't an option for the grant funding, we pivoted the project, and essentially it was more of a community protection project where we could provide community protection and provide, reduce the risk to some of these communities adjacent to where we've seen a lot of wildfires over the years. And using other funding to community county property and things like that.
Yeah, I like this project. Congratulations on getting these dollars. I like the idea of opening up the understory. That's part of it. Do you have a feel for, is this all juniper out there?
Yeah. Yeah, it's juniper with bitter brush and sagebrush understory.
So will they let the bitter brush stay? Because I know it is a, you know, feed for the mule deer and for the babies especially. I mean, will
Yeah, we
trim that appropriately?
in the fuel break itself, we probably try to reduce it pretty heavily. You know, our general rule is to reduce anything underneath the juniper trees itself as far as brush. And then reduce 80% of it outside of that area in the 200 feet. We wouldn't try to get rid of it completely, understanding that it does provide wildlife habitat. But considering the area in general, you know, there's probably adequate bitter brush out there for feed, so you know, this would be more of a compromise to reduce fire risk than provide wildlife habitat.
And within the fuel break area, are you shooting to eliminate all the juniper in that strip, or is it,
No.
I mean, I wouldn't be opposed if you wanted to. But
I'll second that.
yeah, I mean,
I'll make it unanimous.
See, that's kind of where I was going.
Unfortunately, in the agreement, we can't treat anything over 8 inches. And so we would basically, that would be our scope, is to treat any juniper 8 inches and below. And then any remaining juniper, we would limb to a variable 4 to 6 feet to reduce that fire risk.
That's what I was thinking originally.
No, I mean, it's juniper. You need to get rid of the juniper. How do we get rid of the rule that it's making that applicable to?
So what about, is there a clear understanding of removing trees that are at the edge of the right of way? 'Cause I've seen that before where like people are holding onto a tree, whoever, you know, anybody's making this choice, but it's obviously in the right of way. It's the road, the shoulder, a tree, and then the fence. Does
Yeah, I
that
mean,
come up where you're?
Depending
Yeah,
on,
what size?
depending on the right of way, you know, we want to remove as much as possible. We try to work with the adjacent homeowners to reduce risk.
Well, I'm just
yeah.
putting the county right away. It's gonna be a county road out there, so
Yeah,
just, I would just lean into that, that's all.
yeah. I think, you know, the road department works diligently with the landowners adjacent to that area to try and remove as much as possible, but we still have to keep in mind that, you know, these property owners might be adjacent to these right of ways and.
That's
might
the
be
other side of the road, so.
Yeah,
Yeah, I'm showing support for that also. Vote on this or just no?
We do need a,
Yeah, I guess, yeah.
we need a motion.
So I'll move to approve accepting this grant from the Oregon Department of State Fire Marshal for the community wildfire risk reduction efforts and authorize the county to sign the document 2024.
second,
Is there any further discussion? Okay, so I would like to know that 8 inches is a state rule.
that's the rule in the agreement. You'd have to basically petition for an exception outside of the agreement to remove anything outside of 8 inches. I'd say it would probably be pretty challenging to get an acceptance because from a fire risk standpoint, you're not really reducing the risk by removing large junipers. I mean, you're benefiting other ecological, you're benefiting your goals have other ecological benefits,
Yeah.
but fire risk is not necessarily one of them.
That the junipers explode. Isn't getting rid of the risk if they're over 8 inches. I mean, 8 inches isn't very big.
Well, you can limb the
That's what-
junipers, and that's what they would propose, is for them to be limbed.
Well, now that I know the head of the Oregon State Fire Marshal's office lives right by me, I'll be chatting with her about this rule. Yeah, it's nice to know that she comes over here a lot, and Marion. So calling for the vote, Commissioner DeBonne,
Yes.
Commissioner Chang,
yes.
and the chair votes yes. So thank you,
Two
Kevin.
other things,
Yeah.
now that we voted. One, as we get towards the legislative session, it would be great for us to keep an eye on this community wildfire risk reduction program. there are all these programs that were created by Senate Bill 762 in 2021, and the legislature put hundreds of millions of dollars into them, and then in the next legislative cycle, they were squeezed down to almost nothing. So this seems like it's a very useful program for us. So it would be helpful for us to be watching out for the funding levels for this program.
Staff will flag that for Jen to engage with Zoho.
And I guess the second thing, just to go to those larger junipers that are left in the shaded fuel break area. There's no prohibition of this. Having the larger junipers cleared at some point, right? It's just that they don't want us to use this money, this
Yeah,
fuels reduction money, so.
Yeah.
Actually, after you've thinned out all the smaller stuff and lowered the brush, it would actually be probably very easy for somebody to go in, like a firewood cutter to go in and fell some of the bigger trees and
Yeah.
and remove some of that material as well.
yeah, we don't have regulations as the county as far as removing juniper and, the only stipulation that I would put on a firewood cutting permit is, just not the removal of old growth juniper. But in this area, there's probably a limited amount of old growth juniper.
This is actually the city of Ben's property. So we've got our own Deschutes County property that we need to be concerned with.
Yeah.
So,
Thank you.
okay, item number 2. It's like Robert Camps. Here, thank you so much.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Cam Sparks, Budget Manager.
Robert Mitchell, Chief Financial Officer.
So we've previously had these discussions before, but the general fund is structurally imbalanced and the long-term forecast model is indicating that it will have a budget deficit by fiscal year 27. So to address this, we're implementing a series of strategies to reset the expenditure growth curve and achieve financial sustainability within the fund. These strategies include limiting expenditure growth along with focused savings. So limiting departmental expenditure growth to 3.3% in fiscal year 26 generates about $1.5 million worth of savings. Additionally, finance and admin have identified general fund expenditures that can be reduced or reallocated that would save an additional $967,000. So the modeling indicates that these two strategies in tandem achieve a structural balance and financial sustainability for the next 9 years in the general fund. So today's focus is to seek board direction on those items that we've identified to be either reduced or reallocated to a different funding source. So I can move each item if you'd like, and you can approve them as proposed or with modifications at the end, but let me know your preference.
And this is just guidance going into the proposed budget.
Exactly.
Budget committee review after that.
Right.
And one thing to add is the modeling has already included these items that are on there. So any change or adjustment would adjust the modeling, and that would adjust the focus, the savings that we've already given to departments that they would need to achieve. That's great.
That's part of the reason why staff is bringing this discussion now, is to ensure that we're in alignment with the board and to also make sure that those numbers are as accurate as they can be for departments as they begin their budgeting processes.
Like me to just walk through each item?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah, may as well.
Okay, so the first item is to shift 2 behavioral health positions from the general fund. So the general fund's been paying for these positions for the past handful of years to behavioral health's budget and use behavioral health reserve if needed to cover the costs. And this is approximately $334,000.
Yeah, this is the one I probably will have the most to say about. I appreciate that behavioral health has these funds in their reserve to cover these positions. I am concerned kind of at a higher level, I'm concerned about these two positions being crisis services positions. And just about being able to demonstrate the county's commitment to crisis services, so that we are able to ask other people to invest in crisis services. There's, for a number of years now, we've had these real nail biter moments on an annual basis about how we're gonna cover the stabilization center. 2 times, at least twice, the state has sort of swept in and saved the day through the impacts grant program. But in order to be able to provide those services in the long term in a stable way without depending on something that's very contingent from the state, we need to be able to generate enough funding at the local level to stabilize the stabilization center. And if we're not putting significant amounts of general fund dollars into the stabilization center, it's really hard for us to be able to ask the city of Bend or the city of Redmond or the sheriff's office or St. Charles Hospital or any of the other entities who, you know, experience a real fiscal benefit from the stabilization center to contribute. So I just want to express that concern about this allocation. In past years, the county has really the Board of Commissioners has really overstated the general fund contribution we have made to the stabilization center. And if we don't have anything to show for ourselves in terms of general fund contribution to crisis services, it is really hard for us to ask others to contribute.
I don't have a problem with this at all, honestly. They have a huge reserve, it's huge. And the fact that we have contributed so much to that stabilization center, I don't know when it shows up. No, we have historically, what we built, what we took, when we took the building and how much we spent on it to remodel it. You know, we've put in all kinds of efforts into that. And it's there.
all behavioral health's money.
Oh, good. Well, I'm glad to know that. Anyway, we've put in a lot of money and we're all here together and we're all gonna have to pick it up and cut back. So if we can transfer this over, I think it's okay.
I'm supportive of that, I said. There's available opportunities in there. I think the stabilization system has been kind of launched, so the legislature is gonna take a lot more focused look at it because of other efforts like this around the state. So as I say, if it ever comes back in the future as it has, that's a future date, but I support this proposal at this time.
So if you're ready for item number 2, this is a proposal to remove a transfer to the Community Development Department of $100,000 a year. This is for a hearings officer. This cost would be absorbed and incorporated into existing fees. We originally were going to come to you on Wednesday, but we kind of moved this to Monday at the last minute, and so CDD doesn't have the full analysis completed. I think if you had
Maybe
questions
she's
about,
finding out right now.
yeah, she kind of did just
Oh, yeah, yeah.
this morning. So if you had questions about kind of a high level concept of what they're looking at, but we don't have the detail of the analysis
Yeah.
today. So if you didn't want to make a decision without that, we would bring it back on December 18th.
After our budget meeting on, what is it, the
The
10th? Okay,
I think it's an appropriate thing to approve now.
I support this as a starting point. As I say, we're in that awkward time where true cost of operations being plugged back in community development. You know, a little bit roller coaster ride of development activity these days, but yeah, let's. I support this proposal also
okay. So it sounds like you've got 2 people supporting this already, so you don't have to bring it back.
as a starting point, obviously.
Great, thank you. So the third item is we're proposing that, let me back up. In 2024, the board allocated 500,000 of video lottery funds in support of core county services. And we're proposing for fiscal year 26 that the board maintains a similar allocation of funds, but rather shift it to cover debt service of about $480,000 that the general fund has been paying for. This is the jail expansion debt service of $260,000 per year. It matures in 2038. Sheriff's Office pays for the other half of this debt service. And the Jameson rural production property, $230,000 a year, which matures in 2028.
I think these allocations make sense. I would just like to be sure that the things that we allocated video lottery dollars to last year, that they're not expecting to come back and ask for more. If I recall, was the Fair and Expo master planning process.
That was one time.
That was one time. There was environmental health.
Yes.
And we're gonna take care of that in other ways. And what else was there?
And
The DA's.
Oh, yes.
Remodel of that was correlated to the courthouse expansion, so that was one time. Jeff and I did have a conversation about Fair and Expo master planning costs, and just on the staff level, I communicated to him that I think he has an interest in seeking additional support, and I explained this recommendation from staff's perspective, and he understood it. I think we can coordinate at the staff level on if if the board would still like to receive that request, but he understands the model that finance and admin and departments are working on to best support the general fund, and understood that from the larger organizational perspective, this recommendation does more to benefit the general fund than the individual request from the department. And so he's aware of this and the fact that staff is essentially making a recommendation that if the board were to fund core county services, they fund the debt service and not the master planning effort, largely because of the reasons I just mentioned, but also because it's such a small portion of that master planning effort that we feel like the impact would be most meaningful mid-year.
I think that these allocations make sense. As long as none of the folks from last year think that they're coming back for the lottery funds.
And I will just mention that the item to increase environmental fees to offset the video lottery and TRT subsidy, we'll be bringing that back on December 18th.
December 18th, okay.
Okay, so item number
So,
4.
so I think I'd rather see one or the other, not both of these in there, kind of long term. So then maybe jail expansion goes in and just kind of gets plugged in there for the next 14 years or whatever, and not the other one. So that's kind of where I came to on this. And it's it's a reasonable way to get these commitment out of the general fund. I just would like to start to defend video lottery for economic development, and that's always been mentioned for just making the economy go round. So yeah, I just throw that out, see if there's any other support for that. As I say, been introduced to this idea, but that came to me. It's like, maybe just one of those, not both of them.
I think
Well,
staff's thought was was the PNP expansion matures in 2 years, so we saw this as kind of a brief strategy to get one of them fully paid off, but then that would drop and it would just be the jail expansion that remains for a longer term. So this really is more of a couple year strategy with both in, but fully respect that may not be the will of the board.
So when it says 28, does that mean it's 3 years or 2 years? When it said it matures in 28?
It's roughly 2.5, 3 years. 2.5 to 3 years.
But that debt service, was that, I don't think it was associated with the adult parole probation, wasn't it the former OSP building that the county bought that is now the sheriff's office land?
You may be correct. I just know it's the Jameson property.
Yeah, that's the
Yeah.
building that OSP used to own.
Yep.
That the county purchased,
Okay.
and now it's sheriff's office parking lot.
Okay.
It's right next to the Crisis Stabilization Center.
Okay, somehow PNP got attached to it
Yeah.
at some point.
So it's actually a sheriff's office property, or
Correct.
that,
I will also point out that we've noted in the staff agenda that alternatively, TRT funds could be used for one or the other. However, I just want to point out that the more TRT allocations we make, the less they'll be to transfer the capital reserve fund. Especially if the general fund won't be able to make the same level of contributions, at least in the short term.
I know, these are tight times, it's obvious.
There's trade-offs.
and the TRT is not. I mean, it's not outperforming our budget projections
Right.
or anything, so. I mean, if the TRT was $500,000 ahead, that would be something, be really excited to consider, but.
And the nice thing about the second one, the Jameson property, as Whitney mentioned, is it's short term, it's not ongoing, where some of the other ones are looking for ongoing expenditures, and that's where we're challenged in a lot of the funds.
So as I say, I mean, I would feel comfortable still pulling Jameson property out for the next few years, knowing that these are tough choices to be made. But just in support of that video lottery fund, as I say, those are very discretionary funds that can be put out for economic development and special projects. And maybe it'll come right back to this, but just as a starting point is what I'd like. There may not be support, I'm just sure.
I'd actually move to both of them. So
So
the
you-
word, yeah, to do what they recommend.
You do that, I would support that, it's following this.
So when we
following this
talk about,
recommendation.
this is what I had a hard time with this, it says savings, and I'm like going, sounds like we're still going up, you know? What are we really saving? What are we really cutting back? And as I had said a couple weeks ago, like, what were we spending in 2019? And where have we, you know, you've seen our federal government, our debt now is going up $1 trillion every 100 days. That's totally unsustainable, and it's, things are, you know, the federal government is not gonna be sending money. I mean, I would hope it's gonna get really tight, because our debt is tremendous. But yeah, I'm like, okay, I love the word savings, but what are we really saving? So going through this, I'm going like, okay, what are we saving there?
I think you will see, the 1.4 million that I mentioned that departments will need to save in their budgets, when we meet for the retreat in January, you'll be able to see kind of the high level concepts and strategies that departments are taking to reduce their budgets to meet the baseline targets. And those
Okay.
will be saved.
So that's where the pressure is on, is the 22 departments. So I'm not gonna.
It's at the mid-year budget meeting, there's a particular graph where the general fund is spending, and you can see the trends for the last few years on there, where the budgets have been and where they've grown.
Okay,
So, and
Good.
let me answer that as well.
okay, good. So that'll be a couple weeks.
And you'll also kind of see how we're attempting to right size them and, you know, again, reset that expenditure curve, reset that exponential growth that's been compounding.
Right.
And so, and these focus savings are, yes, they're saving the general fund.
Right, they're saving
but-
general, but they're not saving.
These particular lists, correct, are items of where are funds, other funds that are eligible to pay for costs that the general fund doesn't necessarily need to pay for.
Well, I know, so I think my property tax bill is double in 10 years, so, yeah. I mean, when you see people and, you know. What's happening out there.
Okay, if we're ready to move on to item number 4, this is a relatively small one. This is to move the Eastern Oregon County membership to the board's budget. It's $12,500 a year, but it just more accurately represents the fund that's utilizing this
Okay,
membership.
so what is our budget total for BLCC then?
In terms of your total budget or
Right.
your,
I mean, are you talking about like our travel and expenses, and is
Yeah.
that, is it going to that budget? Is
Yeah.
that where it's gonna come out of?
board's budget
And
exists.
so we're gonna subtract that from the gross, and then we're gonna find out how much we can have for travel. Is that where it's going to impact?
Well, the board's budget inclusive of all the costs associated with the board is budgeted in Fund 628, and so the proposal is that this would slide over to Fund 628. You'll recall that there's other items outside of travel in that budget to include legislative services, software that's used to generate meeting packets. I will say it's a pretty small budget. But
So
the,
what is the gross number then?
I can pull it up for you.
I mean, I'm just curious. I didn't bring my,
While she's looking up the number, the part of the process is, Fund 628 is an internal service fund, so those BOCC costs are spread throughout all of the departments for the reimbursement. As this is ineligible, it is an eligible, BOCC cost, then it would be included in that fund, and then it would be reimbursed by the department, so the cost of that amount.
And I saw that, that's an opportunity to, yeah, distribute the overhead of that.
Yeah.
I mean, or we could just stop contributing to the EOCA. That would be a savings.
personally, I appreciate the EOCA, considering that they represent a lot of counties in East Oregon that were severely impacted by the fact that a quarter of all burning in the United States was done in Oregon. I believe that their efforts need to be magnified as much as possible as we can. So did we find the number?
I have it.
$957,000, so just under $1 million for the current fiscal year.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
Okay,
Burgess, as I'm keeping track of these, did we have support from 2 commissioners on that one? So far, at least we've had 2 on thus far, but I just want to make sure I'm tracking correctly. We'll
It's
have
fine
an
to move it.
official vote, but
Yes.
My preference would be to eliminate it, but if we're going to keep it, then I think it's the most responsible thing to do to assign this to 628.
thank you.
okay, item number 5, so the general fund has historically transferred about $120,000 a year to the assessor clerk tax reserve fund. This reserve fund is designated for the eventual replacement of the county's assessment and taxation software. It currently has a balance of 2 million, but we know that the replacement is going to cost more than that. And we'll likely have to debt fund a portion of that. And so in the meantime, this would free up these funds for operations. We have 2 options here. We did initially look at a phased in approach where we're reducing it from 120,000 to 80,000 next fiscal year, then done 40,000 in fiscal year 27, and then eliminate the transfer in fiscal year 28 and beyond. The other option is we could just eliminate the 120,000 transfer in fiscal year 26.
I would think it's not good budgeting not to do something. So eliminating it, when you've got that, it's like someone who needs a new car and they don't set anything aside and we know better. I would say maybe, let's say, do 60,000 a year or something, but don't eliminate it entirely in the future because we know that's coming up. And at 2 million, what is the projected cost of that replacement system?
Well,
Do we
with
have
that-
any idea?
It could range anywhere from $5 to $10 million.
5 to 10?
Yeah.
Yeah,
So, and that was the thought, saving 100,000 a year for 10 years, we just, after 10 years, we'd still only save another $1 million by that time, the software is probably gone up in price as well. So we figured we have a $2 million down payment, we know we're gonna have to debt finance the rest, so is there a reasoning to defer this or not contribute any longer, knowing we're gonna have to go out for debt anyway, and we have a $2 million deposit already to put onto it. But we appreciate the board feedback on which option they feel best.
And besides the allocation we've been making, as the assessor's office, well, or any of these offices, the assessor, the clerk, or finance, contributing anything towards this software at this point, or this general fund allocation is the only thing that we're.
Well, the clerk and the assessor and tax are all in the general fund, so technically they are making the
Right, okay. So it's showing up as an ISF, if not a direct allocation out of the general fund. Is that the right way to think about it, or?
But yeah,
I think
it's,
it's a cost that would be borne in a departmental budget and instead of that is in the general fund and instead of. Having line items in the departmental budgets that are in the general fund, there's just a separate holding place for this eventual replacement. So not quite a charge out, but just an organizational contribution to a future need.
yeah, either way, it comes out of the general fund.
The sessions that we're having about, securing better support for assessor functions services out of the legislature this coming year. Does that affect this at all, or is that, that's more money for staffing or basic services, not for capital investments like this?
Yeah, I, obviously, if there's more funding, we could decide how it's allocated out. However, right now, CAFA, I think reimburses, if I remember right, maybe 28% at the highest of operating costs of the assessor or tax as well. So it would be funds to reimburse, where they used to reimburse at a higher, or maybe it's at 14 now. It's way lower than what it has been historically. So it's just trying to get back to those historical levels, which still didn't fully fund either one of those. Right.
So conceivably, it might help us have to borrow a little less, but if we're talking about a $5 or $10 million product in the next couple of years, pretty hard to get there from 2 million without borrowing some money.
Yeah, and we don't know the timeline of the system of when we'd have to get a new system as well. It could be a couple of years, it could be 5 years or more out. It just depends on the software system in the company, and if it's bought out by another software company, then that could change things a lot.
So. Let's say we were introduced to these concepts, but I like the idea of putting something in there, something small. Cause we do have interest income will compound over time, just adding something small to it. So that $40,000 number from a couple years from now, would be the number that, just to keep exercising that, making sure it's growing a little bit.
Not the 80,000 this year.
Just go right to 40 and just leave it right there.
Go to
So
40 and
we got
not
60,
eliminate,
60, we got 40, 40.
whatever, I just don't want to eliminate it, I don't think that's appropriate. 40, 60, whatever. Who wants to make a motion?
I think the 80, 40 is fine. I could go with 60, 62.
Ways.
Okay, so I'll make a motion to make it 60,000 a year and not eliminate it.
Well, and I'll support that. We don't.
Okay, so
60,000 a year until the year that
we have to purchase.
we purchase it.
Cut it in half to 60.
Second.
There you go.
Okay. Okay, the last item is.
If we're actually investing the 2 million at 4%, we could be making 80,000 on that.
And it is
It is
invested.
earning
it
interest.
is.
Yeah, so I mean, yeah, we put in 60 and we're earning, yeah. Depending on how long it's set, is that set up for a longer period of time? This fund, this 2 million,
Mhm. Yeah, it's its own separate reserve fund, yeah.
do you know what the interest it's earning then?
It's the same interest that our county, because all of our county funds are pulled together, so it's
Right.
around that 3.56 or 3.7, it could be.
Okay, all right, so it's almost 4%.
Yeah.
Okay,
So-
good.
And it's longer term, but it's not so long that that it won't mature by the time we need to.
These are actually, our investments are pooled together, so when we say we typically have $30-40 million on hand, it's just included in that. The rest of the money is invested out.
Got it.
Okay, so now we're on number 6.
Number 6, so the last item that we are seeking direction on is no external commitments of the general fund. Because of, the situation that the general fund is in, if we make external commitments outside of the county, then that would require departments to offset that in some way.
So it's just a promise.
And I think it's a statement as well,
Yeah.
as saying that the forecast that we put forward does not include
Does
any
not include,
additional community contributions or external contributions that aren't already budgeted, and there's not a line item for that. Coming up.
Yep. I'll acknowledge that. I understand that. I support it.
And it's a promise, but it's also, you know, it's a compact, really, that the three of us are making, that when people approach us with the nifty things that they want to do, that's, they're coming from general fund at this point.
Been saying that for a while. So do you need us to put a thumbprint in?
Well, I think, yeah, okay, I think we got some, so now if you want to.
It's on the record.
The item number 5, it was updated to 60,000 per year ongoing until we, actually purchase a software. But if you want to then revise this to one full motion to capture all of the items, would be great as well.
Okay, lovely. So do you want to read back what you have and we could say
The
so
board can do a
moved?
motion, there's like 2 items that didn't have VO support, so we could approve all those and then.
Make a
separate
separate
those.
motion for the,
Yeah. the
Oh,
ones
yeah,
that
you
didn't
can,
have
yeah, you can go one by one as well
Okay,
for.
all right.
Well, I think everything was the proposed. So I mean, I'll make a motion to accept the budget items 1 through 6 that were presented, except for item number 5, the reserve fund, that'd be about $60,000 instead of 120.
Well, I would like to line item. Not second and vote against number 1.
Okay, so do you want to make
But
it 2 through?
But the net result is gonna be the same, so. So I'll second,
Okay,
just putting it on the record.
all right. So it's been moved and seconded, line item number 1, bit of a difference. And I did want to acknowledge then that we're earning under that 2 million, about $74,000. So if we're setting 60 aside and it's earning, that's over 100,000 that we're still, because remember, interest was not anywhere like this 5 years ago, right? That is the one good thing, and the fact that we do have funds aside. So calling for the vote then, Commissioner DeBonne,
Yes.
Commissioner Knight,
Yes.
Chair votes yes. So next Tuesday then. Yes. All right, other items?
I've got something, so from our COIC board meeting, and I had mentioned it, we received that community report from the Civic Action Project. And I just don't know that we kind of done an analysis about action items that pick up. So I just bring it, here's the published item that we received at the COIC board meeting. I'd like to hand it off and just have some help reviewing what's an action item for Deschutes County that we could pick up, because some of these things are higher level at different levels. But since I have this, instead of waiting for a presentation in front of the board, because we said we'd accept this, thinking we can take this report and do some pre-work on it.
I did send that report to the Health Services Department and Community Justice.
Okay, good, so we're already
for
doing
their
that.
input, and so I'm happy to summarize their input and send that to the board.
Yeah, I didn't want it to age too much and because, as I say, we committed to receiving this report also,
Yeah.
this decision group. But it's been published, so we should just take a look at it. That's what my thought.
When are we thinking it might come to us?
Oh, I don't know.
Does the board want, the presentation?
Well, yeah, maybe
I
that,
would.
yeah, as I say, I mean, I'm thinking we are gonna receive it, unless they thought that was kind of receiving for everybody. I didn't catch that at the COIC board meeting. So I'm expecting, give us at some point.
I'm happy to coordinate the presentation from the Civic Assembly. I've been working with them closely, so I can do the coordination.
As I say, we can take a step into it, because at COIC, we just received it, thank you, here it is. This we probably get engaged a little bit more.
Great, sounds good.
there's nothing else. I had a couple of comments about the Wednesday meeting. Start by saying, will be an Oregon Transportation Commission meeting all day on Wednesdays. So won't be able to participate virtually or in person in the meeting. Yeah. So disappointed to see how many important things are going to be on the agenda, and I don't expect that this will happen again. The Oregon Transportation Commission is supposed to meet on Thursdays. This is a unique month. But if I have a situation like this again where I'm not going to be here on a Wednesday meeting, and I let people know about that early, I would appreciate it if we could keep more of the meeting items off of that agenda.
I
in
don't
the
think we
future.
knew that.
Oh,
No, I mean, we didn't know that when we were doing the agenda last Wednesday. I don't believe. Did we know? I don't recall.
I have been telling, I've been telling people for quite a few weeks. Yeah, I know for sure that Nick knew, but
Well, he's not here, so he's not here to defend himself today, so I'm still.
I'm pretty
yeah.
sure I put it in an email, but go back and dig that up if you like.
Well, we did flip several things to today from Wednesday to kind of give a little more balance to the meetings, so.
Well, and I'm supportive of us being flexible in our meetings, in prioritizing, so I've got no problem. If there's direct conflicts in the future, just, and if we know about it, dealing with it, that's fine.
I mean, and in this case, one of the main reasons I'm participating in the Oregon Transportation Commission is to watch out for our interests here in Central Oregon and Eastern Oregon. So that, as all the massive projects roll out, there's still gonna be enough money left at ODOT to plow our roads in the winter and do basic maintenance, so like a little consideration of that would be
And
appreciated.
finish the overpass in Lapine.
That hasn't come up yet.
Well, I'm bringing it up now.
Well, you can.
Go ahead, bring it to the table.
The OTC doesn't make the decisions on what projects are gonna move forward.
If it,
But
that, it's
You
a
should be talking to your legislators.
finished project.
You should be talking to your legislators and to the members of the Joint Committee on Transportation Legislature. The OTC implements the projects that the legislature directs. I have no say in whether there's going to be additional funds for that overpass project or not. So to go to just a few comments about items on the agenda for Wednesday, I'll just say that for item 9, they support responding to rural residents' desire to have access to curbside recycling through Republic Services as a subscription service. For item 12, I support adding an on-site wastewater specialist. If revenue and reserves can support the position, we certainly need that extra capacity to keep up with permitting and inspections and to protect groundwater quality. The land use application deliberations, I probably shouldn't say anything about those in advance of the deliberations because those are quasi judicial. But then I guess the last thing I'll mention is that I was very interested to read the rural housing profile, the draft rural housing profile. I'm hoping it's still draft. Because there's a number of things I would like to see added to that. That to tell a more complete picture, but high level, one of the major upshots of reading that housing profile are that I learned that projected population growth outside of the cities is going to be very small in Deschutes County in the next 25 years, and that just the currently vacant and buildable lots that we have in the county are almost twice as much as is needed to accommodate the projected 5,000 people population growth in the unincorporated county in the next 25 years. So I was glad to see that. And to me, it suggests that much of the effort that we have placed on trying to rezone exclusive farm use zoned lands or rural residential or multiple use agriculture, a lot of the focus on trying to leave opportunities open for new destination resorts are unnecessary, given the amount of vacant and available lands in relation to the projected population growth. So I'm sure we'll be talking about that a lot more in the future. That's all I've got.
Okay, thank you. Any other items? The group? Okay, all right, then we need to go to executive session, I believe. Kim, it's up to you.
Thank you. Shute County Board of Commissioners will now convene an executive session pursuant to ORS 192.660. The specific authorization for this executive session is ORS 192.660 subsection 2E, which allows the board to meet an executive session in order to discuss real property negotiations. Designated staff and the media are allowed to remain during the executive session. However, the media may only report that the board met in executive session and the identified basis for meeting an executive session. Recording devices are not permitted. No final decisions will be made in executive session, and at the conclusion, we will open the doors and invite the audience back to the meeting.
Thank you. All right. So it's now go to executive. Thank you, Brenda, for getting us back, reconvening our meeting. I believe everyone that listened to us has now left, but they will proceed as we've discussed. So, meeting adjourned, and we'll have our next meeting Wednesday morning.